Hadi, we were in South Lebanon watching when Truthful Promise, Iran's retaliation on Israel were coming, and we saw some of these missiles. The Fattah hypersonic missile. Tell us a little bit about it.
Of course, now this is becoming the superstar of the Iranian missile program. But honestly, we cannot dismiss the fact how they developed the program and how they are displaying it right now. From the early phases of when they were able to copy the Scud B, and they started developing it by reducing the CEP, increasing the accuracy of the Scud B missile to increase its efficiency, until the other types of missiles that reached the situation where they wanted to
Pinpoint targeting. Hey everybody, this is Laith Marouf from Free Palestine TV, and we are just outside the Aerospace Industries Museum in Tehran, Iran. Before we continue with this report, I ask you to press the subscribe button on whatever social media platform you're watching this on, and to go to our website, freepalestine.video, to donate so we can continue bringing you this content. Today we're going to go inside, look at the amazing achievements of the Iranian people defending their territory, their sovereignty, and the freedom of many of the people in the region because of the achievements of the youth and the scientists in this country. With me, of course, as usual, is both Rabih, Ghannam, and Hadi Hotait, and we're going to be talking about what we see. And we have with us a crowd of the journalists that came on this trip in commemoration of the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979. This is one of the first parts in the museum, and it depicts the Iraq-Iran war that was launched by Saddam Hussein, funded by the Gulf monarchies, backed by the Zionists and the Americans, to try to take advantage of that moment of revolution in Iran where they thought the country would be weak, to try to take it over at that moment. We see here models of parts of the cities that were destroyed, the car here behind the camera right there. There is a room that is destroyed. But I think what is interesting here is they brought a model of a Scud. Actually, the top part, not the warhead, is an actual missile that wasn't destroyed when it landed on its target. And why did they put this here? Because the fact that this Scud survived gave the Iranians the impetus to try to build their own missile systems. And when we think about how did Iran begin building a missile system, we cannot forget the help that Syria and North Korea gave to Iran. There was a joint missile system program where Syrian scientists, North Korean scientists, and Iranian scientists came together there was a few Scud missile delivery systems, launchers, that were sold by Libya also to Iran. They were Soviet made. The Soviets didn't want to give Iran the Scud systems because at the time there was a race between the Soviet Union and the United States actually to reach Iran. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to try to reach Iran from the north, and the United States with Iraq tried to invade from the south, and it was a race to who's going to capture Tehran first. So we saw how Syria, even though it was part of the Soviet bloc, because of its understanding of how important it is to have Muslim and Arabic independence in the region, collaborated with Iran against the Iraqi government, which was also a Ba'ath government, just like Syria. So as a Syrian, of course, it pains me that Syria has fallen now to the imperialists, but Iran never forgot what Syria did in that moment, where it stood against all of the Arabic states. It was the only Arabic government, Arabic state that supported Iran against Saddam Hussein and the support of the Gulf countries and the Americans. And it paid heavily for that support. This is the military suit of General Hassan Tehrani Moghaddam, who is known as the father of Iran's missile system. And he traveled to Syria, he traveled to Libya to bring back the parts of the Scud missile systems and to study with the Syrian scientists building an indigenous missile defense system for Iran. And he was martyred in the early 2000s when a plane crashed that was carrying him. Some speculate that may have been some jamming or interference by the Israelis or the Americans to martyr him. The Scud missiles program, the missile program that was developed between North Korea, Syria, and Iran, also carried on to their nuclear, by the way, programs. The building of the reactors in Deir ez-Zor that was attacked by the Zionists in the early 2000s, and the nuclear reactors that Iran built eventually with the help of Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, because that was a change, of course, in positionality of the Russia that we know now and the Soviet Union before that. We're looking at some of this equipment that was built by the Iranian scientists, and we can see the simple barbed wire. This was sanctioned and banned from entering Iran. The Iranian nation had to build every little piece of their defensive capabilities as simple as barbed wire. There's a photo of Shaheed Haj Hassan Tehrani Moghaddam, who is, of course, still inspiring droves of Iranian scientists to continue the path that he started. And look at the amazing achievements of these Iranian scientists when we look at the collection of solid fuel and liquid fuel missiles that were used to defend the nation and to support Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen in their quest for sovereignty and an end of the genocide in Gaza. These are the beginnings of the program. You see the Scud there, and it gets heavier and heavier. These are the Qadir missile, and we have the Imad missile, and the Sigil missile, which were all used in the Truthful Promise 1 against the Zionists, and then Truthful Promise 2 when the solid fuel missiles were used. And of course, we have the hypersonic missiles, Fattah, which were used in the Truthful Promise 3. Hadi, we were in South Lebanon watching when Truthful Promise, Iran's retaliation on Israel were coming, and we saw some of these missiles.
Also during the 12 Days War, we saw lots of these missiles from Lebanon, and also we heard their impact inside occupied Palestine. Some of them left very strong impact even in my village, 40 kilometers away from the borders.
The Fattah hypersonic missile. Tell us a little bit about it.
Of course, now this is becoming the superstar of the Iranian missile program. But honestly, we cannot dismiss the fact how they developed the program and how they are displaying it right now. From the early phases of when they were able to copy the Scud B, and they started developing it by reducing the CEP, increasing the accuracy of the Scud B missile to increase its efficiency, until the other types of missiles that reached the situation where they wanted to
pinpoint targeting.
Also, when they started increasing the speed of the missiles to be able to defeat the defense layers of the Americans and the Zionists in the area that starts from the Gulf region and it reaches the occupied Palestine with all the multi-layer defense system of the Israeli occupation, and also with all the aids and supports in the sea of the Arleigh Burke frigates and Arleigh Burke boats that are coming, and they are helping with SM-3s and the SM missiles to also support Israel in suppressing the Iranian missiles that are trying to hit the occupation.
The general that was giving us the tour spoke about how the armed forces kept on coming to the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, talking about the accuracy of these missiles, starting with 200 meters, and he told them that is not enough, go back, give me more accuracy. And we are looking at, he was showing us these electronic systems there, and until they came back to him with 50 meters, and he said that's not enough, what if there is a innocent person that's going to die? And now finally
in Iran it looks like it's the only country maybe in the world that where you can find a place for ethics when you're speaking about missile systems and building a military arsenal. This is the most important part of this, you know. And I was noticing when he was speaking also how you were reacting to this. You know, when we listen about a military person speaking about ethics in war, this is way more far in terms of humanity and caring about humanity if we want to compare it to the Western generals and the Western idea of hegemony, of dehumanizing all of the other people on the earth in order to kill them with the maximum efficiency for them and the minimum damage. And
especially when we live in a world right now of cannibal Epstein, cabal that rules the most of the West.
This is the Fattah model.
That's the second stage of the missile, eh?
Of course, we have been hearing jokes about this Fattah missile for the last 2 or 3 years in the West. Before it was used, that these were only dummy models that are made to deceive the Iranian people and outside Iran regarding these missiles. Of course, when the Iranians used these missiles effectively and targeted the air defenses inside occupied Palestine, it showed that they were not joking. And when we came to see this exhibition, we can tell that they are not joking.
Let's look at this cruise missile. This is one of the biggest cruise missiles I've ever seen.
Yes, a cruise missile. Basically, it's you can
yeah.
You can say that a cruise missile is a very big drone, but it differs from the drone. This is usually they ask, what's difference? Of course, you can see that the wings are very small, which means that you have less maneuverability compared to a drone. So a cruise missile cannot, for example, hover over a target and then target it. It goes in a high maneuverability path to target a location, but less flexible pathway than the drones. But definitely this comes because it has a very heavy power to lift the missile, because it has a much more and heavier warhead. So this is the importance of cruise missiles. They can carry a much bigger warhead that can, of course, make a lot more damage than the drones, the Shahid drones that we're gonna
Before
see
we
later.
go look at this last missile head, I just want to say the general that was showing us the tour was talking about the next stage of Fattah. The difference between them is
Yes.
this Fattah
One
now
has
can
more
maneuver a little
maneuverability.
bit at the
Yes.
end of its path, but the
Yes.
newer version that we don't see here maneuvers from the minute it's launched. It keeps on changing its trajectory, and it's impossible to stop by any means.
Yeah, we did not see the glide vehicle of the new version. They are not displaying it here. I was hoping to see it. This is a gemstone right now of the Iranian missile project. Here they dissected this missile and they wanted to make you see how the different parts of it are designed. But what is really important for us here, and this is why when we speak about the Iranian strategy in terms of building an arsenal, this is why the military commentators in the West all the time, they look at this as a joke, because they do not understand the Iranian mentality in this. The Iranians were focusing on efficient arsenal. So they were not just starting programs like, for example, the Americans do. They start multi-billion dollars programs, and at the end, they
hope
use
they get
1
something.
or 2% of it. You know, this is what they do.
The F-35,
For example,
the Lemon.
or all of the other types that were not used, and we never heard of those projects, and it costed billions of dollars, because this is how the military-industrial complex in the US that is tied to the politics works, and tied to the lobbies that makes the presidents and makes the power, the political power in the US. This is how they work.
This is the warhead of which missile?
This is the warhead of that missile you see over there. Look, it has the same warhead,
Yes.
the shape of the warhead over there.
Yes.
And also, they have one of these types for the Khurram Shahr missile. It's the fat, very big missile over there. It's the biggest. It can carry out to 2 or 3 tons of warhead. This missile carries different types, as you see, of, for example, it's like an artillery
Yeah.
shell, 155 millimeter maybe. No, it's less. It's like 122.
It
I think
carries
it's 122.
80 up to 80 different warheads inside it.
This has cluster bombs and small rockets.
They're showing
over
us the different possibility
Also a
of things that they can
Yes.
put in it. Of course, they can choose to
Jamming
put in
too.
all stuff like this or stuff like that.
small cluster bombs. So this will make this is a nightmare. Of course, this is the Qadr model. It's smaller than the Khurram Shahr model. This is a nightmare for the defense, the air defenses of the enemy. They have to deal with different types of attacks at the same time in the same location for targeting the same target.
And we were told basically this goes out, it fires 80 heads, and then the radars and the defense systems are busy, and that's when all the other missiles.
They are overwhelmed.
Yes,
they are
all the other
overwhelmed.
missiles that are behind it will
And we have to
reach their
say
goal.
that this explains how, in the last day of the 12-day war, the Iranians fired one missile and it was able to hit a target inside Tel Aviv. It was, I think, before the last day. One missile was launched and it hit the target, and later the Israelis said the Iranians used a first-time missile. They use obviously they were using these types of missile that even if they were able to stop some of them, other warheads will smaller rockets will hit the target eventually and make damage. This is regarding the project of accuracy. This was from the Soviet Union. the Scud system, the Scud accuracy system. They developed it here. They developed it more and more to reach from a CEP of 1,500 meters as a circle of accuracy. They reached a 500, 300, 200, 50 meter, 20 meters, I guess. And this is now the most important part for me of all of this exhibition. This is the Iranian-built inertial navigation system, INS. It can make the missile hit the target with, they are claiming that the CP is about 10 meters, which means a pinpoint accuracy. 10 meters for this, the damage that it makes is more than 10 meters. So it's a pinpoint accuracy. This inertial system doesn't need to use GPS, doesn't need to use any connection. It's an offline, completely offline system that can make a pinpoint hit on the targets. And this is, we saw this, for example, when they hit the Weizmann Institute in Tel Aviv. We saw this when they hit at the end, at the last hit in Beersheba, in Beerseba. They hit that building of, and later the Israelis said that the
Mossad headquarters.
There were Mossad agents and soldiers among the dead people, because at first they said the Iranian massacred a building inside.
These are the engines. We don't want to take too much time, but these are the amazing,
engines.
all of it engines produced here completely by the
It's
Iranians.
a very sophisticated technology that the Iranians were able to copy and to develop. And right now they are producing it by themselves. And they have the technology needed, of course, for all of these very big missiles that are related to the aerospace system. Aerospace project.
Fire their satellites up
aerospace
into space.
project, not only the surface-to-surface missile project. These heavy, very heavy missiles are, of course, using Iranian-made technology regarding those jet engine technology.
And of course, by day 10 almost of the 12-day war, the Israeli air defenses collapsed. Many of these missiles were used to hit the air defenses, and then it opened the airspace of the Zionist colony for the remainder of the missiles to pound it to smithereens. Now we're in the section of the drones, and this is the first drone produced by the Iranian, defense systems, and it was in the middle of the Iraq-Iran war. I mean, I personally didn't think that they went
late 80s.
Yeah, that far in their production.
It carried a DSLR and a regular DSLR. You know that
not even a DSLR.
No, sorry, SLR. It's not a digital.
With a real
the film, the negative film. Technology, of course, before the digital.
So if can fly in a 15-minute circle 15 kilometer circle for 15 minutes, 30 kilometer circle for 15 minutes. That's what I remember.
Less. 5 kilometers.
5 kilometers.
4 to 5 kilometers at maximum. They used it. It was just before the attacks. They sent it to have aerial footage of the area that they attacked.
Comes back, brings up photos.
And it was,
they have to develop
since
them.
Then they were using Iranian-made ideas to try to overcome these sanctions that were prohibiting them and banning them from using and buying technologies. And here you have the famous Muhajir. It's one of the series of Muhajir. Right now they have, I think, Muhajir 4 or 5. They are using it. This was a surveillance drone, a famous one that later was developed to carry arms also and to carry missiles. Many types of drones. This one was also seen outside Iran before. I just want to comment on one drone. This
Shahid.
Drone that is a
171.
copy, the same copy of the RQ drone that was downed by the electronic warfare defense system of the Iranians more than 10 years ago. I forgot, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. The American drone.
They took it over and landed it in Iran.
The American drone entered the airspace of the Iranians, and it entered only the Hormuzgan area that is also right on the borders with Oman and Dubai, and it's not like they penetrated inside the Iranian territories, but they were able to down it with electronic warfare systems. It was a surprise for the Americans. That was the gemstone of the surveillance drone systems. Back then, they took it and they are masters. The Iranians are
And
masters
at
of
the
reverse
time,
engineering.
President Obama begged the Iranians
Yes.
to give it back, and of course they didn't.
They copied it. They used the technology from it. They understood this technology and were able to make lots of similar drones in terms of shape. You can understand this. For example, the Shahid drones over here. You can see that, of course, this is the very famous Shahid 136 drone that right now you are finding it in Russia, and lately the
So they started
the
copying.
Germans and French started a production line.
The Iranians started copying the Americans, and now everybody else is copying
Because they developed
Iranians.
it.
Yeah.
This drone costs $20,000. That drone that they downed, the RQ, was costing the Americans multi-million dollars to produce. This is the importance of the Iranian way of doing effective and military engineering. They do not spend this is why, for example, when they compare the budgets of military, building military arsenals between US and America, they say, oh, it's a fraction. The Iranian budget is a fraction in terms of military production.
And then, you know,
but
people
they are
that,
making the most out of it.
People that watch history about World
This
War
is
II
Mohajer 6.
Realize
This is Mohajer
that
6.
The reason that the Germans lost is the reason that the Israelis are losing right now, and it's about the cost of production and how many can you produce as fast as possible. Right now, the United States cannot keep up producing air defense systems for the Israelis. The Israelis themselves can't produce enough of them, and Iran is outpacing them with the production because of that.
Without entering, this is the original RQ drone. This is the American drone that was downed by the electronic warfare system. This one over here. They fixed a bit of it because it was destroyed a bit when it went down from the outside. And that one over there is
the MQ.
The MQ-1C, I guess. This is a very specific type made with the highest capabilities regarding surveillance and electronic warfare. It's very important in terms of combined electronic warfare. It goes with the Poseidon 8 famous.
And the story was that this was also entered Iranian airspace just over
hit by
the
one
Hormuz. And with the Poseidon, it was flying. They gave them 3 warnings to leave Iranian airspace. They didn't, and Iran chose to down this MQ.
They fired 1 missile. I guess it was a Sayyad missile. I'm not sure, but it was Iranian-made missile.
And then at that time, President Trump, in his first term, threatened to bomb 5 locations in Iran. Iran said, "We are ready to retaliate if you do." And then he came out and thanked Iran for not downing the Poseidon that had all these American soldiers.
And the Poseidon was flying lower than this drone.
Much easier
so
to
basically
hit.
It was much easier to be downed than this one. But the Iranians all the time, they choose to send these messages with the lowest human cost.
And if we can understand that they had to collect all these parts from the bottom of Hormuz.
The idea of reverse engineering in the Iranian mentality is very serious.
So
they are ready to go.
It shows that they're able to go with their submarines all the way to the bottom
and you know
of
how much
the
this
Hormuz,
is difficult.
And pick up all those electronics and then collect all those floating pieces before the Americans can collect them. This is a huge achievement. One last part we're going to look at, which is the air defense part, which basically...
I'm going to give very small comments. This is a copy, Laith, of the glide bomb. We see the Americans and Israeli glide bombs, the GBUs that are being used. This is Iranian system, glide bomb system that they are using. Of course, they produced all of these weapons to be used on this
old
Sukhoi 22.
Soviet.
And new air-to-air missiles, and also this Arman missile. These are very important, and they can make this plane effective.
They're trying their best to not have to depend on Russia or China, because you never know, of course.
Because they understand how much sovereignty is important, especially regarding military term.
Okay, and this is the last part, and I think it's very important for people to understand how Iran was able to defend itself during the 12-day war is not only being able to shoot back at Israel or American targets in the region or American vessels in the region, it's also about being able to shoot down anything that's coming from the enemies of the Islamic Republic. And that missile, the air defense system, is the one that shot down the MQ-9, eh?
This is, I think, a more sophisticated system. I don't know if those are Sayyad missiles or Ta'ir missiles, most probably. But yes, this is an Iranian-produced missile. I think this is a copy of Book 1, the Savum Khordad. It's the 3rd of Khordad. It's a famous day in Iran. They named this after this Savum Khordad. It's the system, of course, now they have more sophisticated systems. It uses its own radar. The importance of the system is that it can function by itself. It doesn't need other systems next to it, like, for example, the more sophisticated systems. This one uses its own radar to detect the target and to lock on the target, and they fire from the same vehicle, which means that it fits the Iranian way of resisting any attack instead of just going on a more sophisticated system like the THAAD or the others that, of course,
require a whole array of defense systems.
Of course, every one of these defense systems has different function, but we're speaking here just to make the audience understand. This one also was, these are copies of Russian technologies regarding air defense.
That's a command center as it is, actually.
Yes.
One last thing we're going to say is everything we saw here is at least 10 years old.
Yes.
Iran is much more advanced than this.
They will not be displaying.
They're not going to display it for everybody. And there will be a lot of surprises if the Zionists and the Americans make the mistake of targeting Iran again. Inshallah, Iran will be protected and safe and not be a target again. Inshallah, Iran will stay able to aid the resistance, axis of resistance, and be one of the countries that help in the liberation of Palestine. This is Laith Marouf and Hadi Hotait. Behind the camera is Rabih Ghannam. I ask you one more time to press the subscribe button on whatever social media platform you're watching this on, and to go to our website, freepalestine.video, to donate. And until we see you next time, we bid you all a free world from imperialism and Zionism.